right, I want to introduce you on Unbelievable today to a 22-year-old named Jamari Wilson, who is wanted but should have never been released from jail. This segment is brought to you by Eastside Weight Loss Clinic. I'm down 37 pounds on the program, and I lost most of that weight in just 2 months. There's no prepackaged meals, no counting calories, no drugs or injections. Schedule your free 15-minute consultation today at eastsideweightlossclinic.com. All right, so this is from the Renton Police Department. Renton Police Violent Crime Unit searching for 22-year-old Jamari Wilson. Wilson is a known gang member with multiple warrants for his arrest, totaling more than $111,000. The warrants are for domestic violence incidents and 2 unlawful possession of a firearm incidents. So there he is, Jamari Wilson, 22 years old, got a couple face tattoos there. So, look, run-of-the-mill, I guess, if I just saw that and we didn't know the background here, run-of-the-mill 22-year-old gang member on the lam from law enforcement. Unfortunately, there's a lot more to this story. And again, it has to do with decisions being made that cannot be being made for any other reason except to sow discord, danger, fear, and leave you relying on the government for help. So 22-year-old Jamari Wilson shouldn't be on the run right now because he should still be behind bars. So he had multiple warrants out for his arrest for domestic violence, illegal gun possession, but Renton police ended up arresting him. Great news. So he goes before a judge, again, on warrants on these serious crimes. And what does the judge do? Well, the judge releases him to electronic home monitoring because, I mean, it's a 22-year-old young black man. So you've got to release him to electronic home monitoring because absolutely the color of his skin matters. It doesn't matter that he's a violent criminal. We're going to release him because we're so woke to electronic home monitoring. This has become pretty standard. Well, police, you're on electronic home monitoring. So you're probably going to have some check-ins with police, etc. Or if there's a problem, and police see or believe that you're continuing to engage in criminal behavior while you're on electronic home monitoring, they're going to pay you a visit. So they paid him a visit. They arrested him again because when they showed up, he had a cache of weapons. Multiple high-powered weapons, obviously, which he shouldn't have in his possession. Certainly not at the home where he's on electronic home monitoring on those previous violent felony warrants. So he goes back to court. Already been at home, electronic home monitoring. Police find him with a cache of firearms. Well, you got to go back to court, buddy. And I'm sure even for those officers, even in this climate, they thought they're not going to let him out now. They already let him out once when he was facing these violent charges for violent crimes. Then we found him with a cache of weapons, and we know the progressive left, if they hate anything, it's weapons, right? So clearly they're going to lock this guy up. But the judge he went in front of that time was a prolific activist judge, Judge Joanna Bender. And what did Judge Joanna Bender do? With this 22-year-old known gang member, had already been arrested once on multiple warrants, domestic violence, illegal gun possession, got home monitoring once, didn't care, had a cache of weapons in his home, gets arrested a second time. Well, Judge Joanna Bender decided that she would let him go back home where he'd been caught with a cache of weapons and try that electronic home monitoring thing one more time. And how do you think it went the second time? Well, now, not only was he breaking the law, but he cut off his GPS device, and now he's on the run. And I think to make matters worse, look, if he fled to another state, I feel bad, but that's the state's problem. The Renton Police Department thinks he's still in the area. Clearly doesn't care that he has pending charges. Clearly doesn't care to obey the law, is armed and dangerous probably at this point, because I'm sure that he's found a new way to get weapons. And now, who knows where he is? So that's what you can do in today's criminal justice system when you have activist judges like Joanna Bender. And you've heard about Joanna Bender many times. We've talked about her on the show because she constantly makes decisions like this. She constantly makes decisions that are, in her mind, about the best interest of the typically young black man who's in front of her. I think there's been a couple cases where it's been a young person but white, but typically a race-based decision. And she does what's best for the criminal and not what's best for the community at large, not what's best for the victims. You might recall the last time we talked about her, she had told the media, so there was a 20-year-old, Kashawn Jimerson, who stabbed this handyman to death. Remember that story? He was in court facing second-degree murder. They'd had like a verbal dispute. He turned around and hit this handyman from behind with like a bat or something, or a pipe, and then stabbed him to death with a giant butcher knife. And he's in front of Joanna Bender for a court hearing, and she tells the media that they're not allowed to show his face, on TV, even though he was clearly going to get out of jail and get a little soft bail from her. And the public deserves to know what his face looks like so they can protect themselves if they live in that neighborhood from a guy who just stabbed a handyman to death with a knife. Here was a story on it from our friend David Rose at Fox 13 at the time.
Let's talk about those previous decisions. Back in July, we told you Judge Bender set bail at $50,000 for the man accused of shooting a grandmother multiple times at an ATM right in front of her granddaughter. The woman, who only wanted to be called Tina, was outraged with the decision.
I should have the right to have the peace of mind knowing that they're locked up. And I don't have that. I can guarantee you my medical bills far exceed that amount of money.
Then, in February, the accused accomplice in a double murder had his bail dropped by Judge Bender from $1 million to $20,000. Joshua Jones was accused of dumping the bodies of Robert Riley and Ashley Williams in Maple Valley. When Williams' family found out about Judge Bender's decision, they were furious.
Nobody is safe, you know, if he's out. And $20,000 bail is not good enough to protect people.
This judge has lost her damn mind. But again, it's a feature, not a bug. You have activist judges being instilled by activist politicians to do activist things to serve the interest of those politicians, which I said earlier, what is it? The interest of those politicians is to make you and I as dependent on government as possible so that they can get more money out of us. So they can dole that money out to their cronies and to their allies. And there's no other reason for that. I just want to really quickly play, I mentioned the case with 20-year-old Kashawn Jimerson, where she wouldn't even let the media show the face of a violent criminal who stabbed a guy to death with a butcher knife. And listen to the sympathy that Judge Joanna Bender gave the suspect and his family versus the victim.
This hearing isn't about me, but I will share with you that I often get death threats based on the decisions that I make, which is equally frustrating to me because I'm trying to do my job, and it should not be the responsibility of any member of the public to threaten my life because I am trying to uphold the law. So I am very empathetic to the situation that the family finds themselves in, having experienced it myself. And I understand personally how very frightening and disrupting it is, all the more so when you are also navigating this incredibly traumatic time in your family. I'm just doing my job. You're dealing with a crisis. That's a huge difference, and one for which I am very empathetic. I will also take this opportunity to editorialize that I hope that the press continues to take seriously their obligation to tell the stories of what happens in our courtroom in a fair and unbiased way, and takes every reasonable editorial action to not stir up public sentiment for revenge.
Yeah, so that was the judge, honest to God, talking to a murder suspect's family, overfloweth with empathy because they didn't want his face shown on TV because they thought he might be a target when he's released. He stabbed someone to death. And she's sitting there talking about, oh, I'm so empathetic for what you're going through. And I also deal with death threats because of the decisions I make in this courtroom. Yeah, we're not stirring up death threats, but you are stupid. You are not stupid. Sorry, I take that back. You're dangerous. You are absolutely dangerous, and you are going to get people killed, maimed, robbed, raped, whatever it is, because you work for politicians who have the same ideology you do, but who have a different agenda. Their agenda is money. And this legislative session, again, as they try to close this, it's all tied together. It's all freaking tied together. As they try to close this imaginary $14 billion budget deficit that they created by overspending, what are they going to leverage to make the argument that they need to increase taxes? Because a common sense person would say, look, man, you got a budget crunch, you got to cut some cash, you just got to cut some spending. So in order to convince people that new taxes are the way, they have to do what? Well, they have to make people desperate for those new taxes. They have to make people beg for those new taxes. So they're going to say that unless we have new taxes, we have to cut the essential stuff from government. They'll totally bypass all the non-essential stuff that they're spending money on. Well, without these new taxes, we have to cut the essentials. We'll have to cut from your kids' education. Oh my God, public safety? You know how scary and dangerous things are? Well, we're going to have to take money from public safety, and we're going to have to close jails, and we're going to have to, which they're already threatening to do, and we're going to have to do away with the plan that Bob Ferguson promised on the campaign trail to put $100 million towards hiring more police officers unless you are okay with us increasing new taxes. I mean, they can do it anyway. This isn't a vote of the public, right? But they want to face as little political backlash as possible. So they want to gaslight and convince you that without new taxes to close the budget deficit, they will have to make cuts to your life, to things in your life that are very, very important. And that is the way that they get voters in the state to sign off on it and to fall for it, hook, line, and sinker. They have enough money to do all of the things they need to do when it comes to keeping the public safe, when it comes to education. They have enough money to do those things. There's no question about that. What they have to do is twofold. Stop the policies that are making those things worse and wasting the money that they do spend on those problems. Put policies in place that will actually fix those problems, but won't make them richer, which is the problem in the first place. It's disgusting. They genuinely don't care if people die as long as they get more money in. They do not care if people die as long as it can lead down a road of more taxation and more control.